All right, here we are. All right, everyone, welcome to the master class. We are about to get started shortly, so let's get everybody to load up, and I will see you in a. All right, so I see a couple people popping on. Does anyone have a question before things really get started? Today is the webinar, the master class on book sales and book marketing. All right. If you do want to say anything, we have chat options available and comments. Just right now, if anybody can comment to say that you can hear me and you can see me, that would be helpful. There we go. All right, we're getting a few more people in. Recording's in progress. All right. Oh, first comment. All right, Lisa, thank you very much. You do hear me. All right. Okay, so I have a bunch of information prepared for you today, and I'm also in a great Ask Me Anything frame of mind. So ask me anything that you like. One of the things that I really wanted to talk about today is how somebody prepares their author's journey to actually make money. So many authors are so passionate about just the writing process and getting it out there, and there's kind of this pure idea of writing your book and getting it out there, and I get it. I worked on my books so much because I want to make an impact on people beyond making money. But unless you set things up to make money from the beginning, then well, you can really be facing a world of hurt. You start running out of money that you should be using for marketing, and then you can't continue on. So if anybody has any questions on anything like that, I am going to start the process by giving you a little bit of background. For those of you who don't know me, I am Dave Farrow. I'm a 2-time Guinness World Record holder for memory. It's behind me over there. And I made some memory courses and travel and speak on memory. And what I did after that was I basically promoted myself via publicity. So I've been personally appeared on over 2,000 interviews. Some of the stuff behind me here from the New York Times and the Today Show, Regis and Kelly, and everything else you can imagine. Dr. Oz before he got into politics, all that stuff. And I still do this today because I run Farrow Communications, and every day we take authors and experts and we get them media attention. I'm going to tell you why that is so important and why publicity seems to be the only way to really sell books. But you have to set your book up properly in the beginning. So the first tip I have for everybody, and we have, the video is buffering. I hope you guys can hear me okay. I think I've got pretty good internet here. Let me see if I can shut down a couple of things. Yeah, no, that's shut down. And all right, I can shut that down. No, I'm running pretty lean and mean here. All right. Still buffering. So you're seeing a bit of a delay. Let me see if I can adjust the recording. I have it on high definition. All right. No audio. You don't hear my audio at all? How about now? Can you hear my audio okay? I don't understand why we're not getting audio. Test, test. No, everything's showing here. Wow, we got a bunch of mixed responses. Usually StreamYard is fantastic, so I'm really surprised by this. I'm sorry, everybody. I don't know what to do to change this other than just kind of going forward with it. So hopefully it gets a little bit better. It doesn't look like there's many things I can adjust for that. It might just be might be something technical. All right. All right. Well, we got a few people saying that there was a problem and maybe the problem's gone away. So I'm just going to go forward with what we have. All right. Oh, okay. It has gotten better. Good. Okay, so the first thing that I want to start a discussion with, and I welcome your comments on this, is the book itself. A lot of times, marketers come to encounter authors after they've written the book or when they're in the process of writing the book, and I would say one of the biggest mistakes is not actually thinking of the marketability of the book itself. I always say this that a book should be more like a tool. So when you are writing it, it should be solving some kind of problem. Now you might think to yourself, but Dave, my heroes, like Stephen King or J.K. Rowling or whoever your great Dan Patterson, whoever great author is your hero. Maybe they didn't have a book that solved a problem. Like they're not writing self-help. Maybe Tony Robbins is your hero, but still, I would actually argue that all of those people are solving problems. In fact, they're solving really big problems. J.K. Rowling is a great example I talk about all the time. She was on the Donahue show. That really goes back. I was just a wee lad at the time, and I still remember it. She was completely unknown, and she was on, I don't remember what year it was, but she was on the Donahue show. That was like the biggest show. That was like Oprah in the day. And basically, she had picked a fight with the Baptist church. I believe it's the Westboro Baptist Church. Those guys. And basically, I heard later a rumor that she pretended to be some members of the Baptist church just to get them riled up, like pretending to be a member and calling the church and saying, "Oh, this author is getting young kids to be fascinated with witchcraft and wizardry and stuff," which I suppose Harry Potter really did, right? So she either generated or she took advantage of this controversy about kids being indoctrinated in witchcraft, and then she came up with a very, very powerful counterpoint. Basically, everybody in the audience was like, "Well, what do you think of these kids reading a book about witchcraft?" And then they responded, "Well, my 11-year-old is reading a book like several inches thick and loving it." And she just said that phrase again and again. It reminds me of like, the Geico Gecko just saying, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. It's like you want to have a solution that your book provides. And, believe it or not, in the very beginning, I think the thing that sold Harry Potter was children's reading. It was a great way to get young kids to read. And for the first few years, that's really all the adults would talk about Harry Potter, not by what a great story it was. This was when adults weren't really into it, to my knowledge, at least. And but it was they would talk about it because it was getting young kids to read big books. That was it. So it solved a problem because everybody wants their kids to be smart, right? You could look at something like even a Dan Patterson, and he solves a problem talking about corporate greed and maybe exposing some of that. You could look at Stephen King, and he solves a problem when it comes to fear and distrust and everything. Just having something that entertains you over the summer or distracts you or pulls you into a fantasy, that does solve a problem, that lowers your stress and everything. My point is, focus on what problem your book actually solves, not how great the story is. Whenever I talk to an author and they're in they're doing a book signing, they're just in love with their story, and I'm sure the story is fantastic, but the person who's hearing about the book doesn't know any of that. So it just kind of falls on deaf ears. Now, mind you, a lot of the authors that we deal with are in the category of nonfiction, but I'm kind of focusing on fiction right now, mainly because people think that that can't be turned into a problem solution sort of situation. Obviously, nonfiction is typically a problem solution. You want to learn about computers, you get a book on computers, and you'll learn about computers, right? Or Spanish, or how to pick up women, or whatever the book is. Any sort of nonfiction solves a problem, but I will also argue that a lot of the fiction stuff solves the problem as well. And if you start with the problem that it solves, then you make a big difference. See, when I hear interviews of Stephen King, when he had new books out and stuff, he wouldn't talk about the relationship between the characters and things like that. He would say, I think this book is for anybody who, is really afraid of aliens. Like, this is a great way to confront your fear, for example, right? In one of his books, or, afraid of the unknown or something. And he was always talking about fear as a concept, and maybe that would make you braver. And he was a really good salesperson, and he would sell his books by focusing on what problem it would solve. So that's the first step, is make sure your book solves an actual problem that actually fixes something out there in the world. And then once you actually solve the problem, then you have the core bit of information to get publicity. Now, why is everybody so focused on publicity? First off, before I go on to the next section here, is there any questions on solving a problem? Does anybody have a specific example? Feel free. I'll go back to it. Even if I'm talking about something else, feel free to put a message out about it, and I'll talk about it. Basically, once you have figured out what sort of problem you solve, the core problem that you solve, then you want to try to get exposure for this. Now, people have tried to sell books with advertising a lot, just like you'd sell anything. You'd sell drinks, or you sell a car or something like that. You sell it by running ads. And there's some mixed results. Sometimes people can sell books with ads, especially if it solves a problem, but it's actually quite rare. One of the interesting things about reading a book, especially if there's some sort of story or narrative to it, is that the book has to give you like a story, right? So this is what I tell to our clients all the time. For those of you who don't know, that aspect of my business, Farrow Communications, we do publicity for authors. We get you famous, basically. So if I have a client that's going to go on television or something like ABC or something like that, I'll sit down with them, and their first instinct is to kind of be like Google or AI and just answer the questions directly. And I strongly encourage them not to, because, basically I can do that, right? I can go to my phone, I can go to Google, and I can get questions answered. So let's say it's a relationship book, right? And somebody asks, what are the, different stages of repairing a relationship? I don't know. Like, I don't know the content, but I'm just giving an example. Instead of going into, okay, well, stage 1 is this, stage 2 is this, and then stage 3, you have to do this. Instead of being dry like that, what you want to do is you want to tell a story. You want to tell a story of either you or somebody who read your book, or somebody who interacted with your book and said, I had a neighbor who read my book, and she was on the edge of divorce. And so the first thing that they did was, was in chapter 4 was, to sit down and do da 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 da. And then all of a sudden, because you made it into a story, I'm interested, I'm engaged, I'm really focusing on what's going on. So that's really why you want to start with, what problem does your book solve? And it has to be a singular problem. A lot of times people are trying to solve multiple problems with their books. They're trying to solve, everything under the sun. And I mean, I know I'm guilty of that with BrainHacker. I've got like brain hacks in here, from how to sleep better to losing weight to everything else in between. But still, though, it has one core message, is that by hacking your brain, you can live a better life, right? So you want to solve a core, deep, systemic problem. Even if you have a bunch of examples for it, a bunch of stories for it, you should have a lot of different stories for your book. But you want to solve a core problem. And the problem that you solve will determine what direction you go in for PR. So when we encounter a client, Generally, we're going to take their topic and we're going to look through Google Trends. You can look up Google Trends yourself. There's also a number of other social media listening services out there. And what we're going to do is we're going to look for a story that's happening right now. So it could be based on politics, it could be based on culture, but typically a story involves a demographic and a trend. So a demographic and a trend. So this could be blue collar men are wages are skyrocketing, right? Or it could be women over 40 in the workplace are worried about losing their memory or something. Or it could be people in rural America are falling for the opioid epidemic. So you see all of these things, they all revolve around just some demographic and then some trend. So if you find the trend, you found the story. So find the trend in the story with your book. Who is going to buy your book? When I first offered my memory course, I was going after everybody. In fact, I thought it would be people in their 60s and 70s who would buy the book. I was kind of young then, and I thought, oh, somebody who's older, they're going to be worried about their memory and they're going to buy my books and courses and stuff like that. And I got a few sales through that. But I didn't take into account the fact that because I was also a young person that had overcome ADD and improved my memory, that they would be interested in that story. So it turns out the people who bought my courses more than anything were typically women, age 45, who had a child, usually a boy, who was in their final year of high school and trying to get into college and having some struggles. Or they were in their first year of college and they were falling behind right away because of the demand. So what I didn't realize at the time was that there was a real problem, right? Anybody who's experienced this or you work in academia today, you know what I'm talking about. The level that they hold you to in the final year of high school is nowhere near the level they hold you in the first year of college, right? So that's why we get a 50% dropout rate in the first year. I don't know if you are aware of that. So I was not aware of that problem, but my customers brought it to me. And that's what I want you to try to do. So while you're listening to me, you might think to yourself, well, I know what the problem is, but really the real problem will be what your customers are going to tell you. When you get a customer who buys your book and goes, I bought your book because, my mom was struggling with this, or I had, this problem. And it's really the customers that are going to tell you what kind of business you have. I'm kind of going on a tangent here. Send me a text message, guys, if you think my tangents are terrible or you think they're worthwhile. Let's hold a vote. But one of the interesting tangents is that in studies of businesses, there are scores of businesses that tried to be one thing and customers tried to make them into something else. There was, probably, American Express is a great example. It was a travel company. It was a shipping company. And then they started making traveler's checks. And then the traveler's checks took off so much, it led to credit cards and financing. So that's essentially like UPS becoming a bank. Like it starts off as UPS, but it ends off as a bank. And you see that time and time and time again. You see it in fashion or something, or someone makes, there was this one company that made a kind of boot that was just really aimed at blue collar workers, like plumbers and things like that, and contractors and stuff. And people in the hip hop community just loved it, and they started mentioning it in their ads and mentioning in their songs and everything. And sales just took off. And the CEO of the company didn't like this. He told people that his boots were made for hardworking people, not for fashion. And then the whole hip hop community turned against him, and then they lost everything. It was one of those things that, if you have a whole crowd of people coming to buy your stuff, just go with it, right? So who is going after your stuff? When you have a book and you're getting people to grab the book, why are they doing it? And that'll give you a really good hint. So you solve the problem and then you pitch the media. This is what we do on a regular basis. We're going to pitch the media. And I have a few slides here on what media pitching will look like for us. So this is just some shows that I've been on, and I'm kind of telling you how to get onto that show. The first thing you need is you need an offer, and you need a hook, and you need interview skills. So the offer is really like what I talked about, like what problem are you solving? In my book, we're solving brain training. You have any issue, we can solve it with brain training, right? What offer are you making? What are they getting when they get your book? And then the hook is what gets their attention right now. What is that demographic and trend that gets their attention right now? And then interview skills. You won't be able to bring any of this together unless you can actually do an interview. So I'm going to talk about all that stuff today. All right. Once again, we're going to get Ben Franklin here to tell you that you use a story to solve a problem. It's really important that you're not saying, oh, lots of people have this problem and here's how you solve it. Take your vitamin B or something like that. You're saying, when my cousin had this problem, or when I had this problem and it was affecting my marriage or something like that, then you intrigue people. There's an old saying that stories, information informs, but stories sell. Can everybody hear me okay now? I think we haven't lost anybody, so I hope we're in the right category here. Types of hooks. So one of the common types of hooks is a seasonal hook. Just to describe, there's somebody who was asking me when I went over this before to kind of give a definition of a hook. It's what it sounds like. You're trying to get the attention of the media. You're trying to hook their attention. So this would be like if you're sending an email to somebody, this is what's in the subject line. That's going to hook them. That's going to get their attention. So a seasonal hook is if your topic fits a particular season. So my stuff might have fit going back to school time, right? If you're in relationships, then it could fit a springtime, or it could fit Valentine's Day or something. So these are seasonal hooks. Ask yourself, what times throughout the year can we make a story, make a hook that'll tie it in? And the other thing to keep in mind is that the seasonal hooks are more than just spring, summer, winter, fall, right? It's also, there are just hundreds of times throughout the year that there's special days. Like, I don't know if you know this, there's Secretary Awareness Day. There's like Arbor Day. There's all sorts of different days for different situations. So literally 2 times throughout the year that Alzheimer's awareness is happening. Alzheimer's Awareness Day and Alzheimer's Awareness Month and International Alzheimer's Awareness. So we would always do pitches on those days as well. So never underestimate the value of that hook. We did some stuff with the Jamaican bobsled team, and I wanted to put this up there because nostalgia can actually be a great hook. We got them on the Today Show, and so if you do a book that's a period piece, then feel free to bring up nostalgia, to bring up the past and history. You might think that because it's an older story, like it takes place a time ago, that you wouldn't be able to do this, but it's absolutely not true. You have to bring up the story. Today, nostalgia sells so well. That's all I just gotta say is it's selling more and more and more. People are longing for the past times, and they're kind of reimagining it. So keep that in mind. Another type of hook is a listicle. So this could be top 5 ways to improve your health, top 5 ways to lose weight, top 6 ways to boost your memory. Now, I tried to tell you not to sound like Google. Don't answer the question directly, and I still stand by that. But the hook can still be a list of things. When you're pitching the media, let's say you're talking to your local affiliate. And you want them to put you on the air, they don't know you. They don't know you or trust you. So try to tell them to take the whole, to give you a whole hour of their time, or give you a whole segment, like an 8-minute segment and stuff. You've got to really kind of convince them to do that. But if you have a listicle, this can be a great way to get into an audience that is they're very cautious to spend some time with you, even if you're doing some stage time, if you're getting on a stage, like let's say you're getting on to I would suggest people start with their local Rotary clubs and their local chambers of commerce. You can speak at those to get your speaking skills better. But even in those cases, if you have somebody who's hesitant to have you on the air, or in front of the stage, tell them, oh, I'm going to talk to them about the top 4 things that they should worry about with their taxes, or the top 5 this and that. And the reason why this works is because it's a finite amount. So if they're afraid or nervous to have you on the air, they know that they can at least bump you to the next thing and the next thing. And I've seen it happen where people kind of freeze and they're nervous on the air. So they'll say, okay, what's number 2? Oh, what's number 3? And number 4 is this, isn't it? And they just kind of rush you through because they know that it's not going to be a great interview, but they're at least safe that way, because it's a listicle. It has a beginning, middle, and end, and it doesn't go on forever. So keep that in mind. Another really important thing that I want you to think about with your book and with PR is getting paid twice. So conceivably, you'll get paid when you sell your book, right? And ideally, you go on to a show and you'll sell a few copies of your book, and that'll be great. But with every single event that you do, every single talk, every single a PR event, anything like that, you really have to think of your future situation. So there's a lot of times that I'm doing webinars, or I'm doing live talks with audiences, and we'll film that content, and then that content will go into YouTube videos or something else. So that's what I want you to start thinking of, is when you're doing some of these activities that you do, there's always a way to get paid twice. One of the best examples for PR is that, if I were to get you on a decent show or interview, then I get you a bunch of publicity, then that would boost your career in that moment. But if you then later on have that in your bio, or have that, I don't know, on your wall, right, while you're doing videos, then that boosts your reputation afterwards as well. So always think of at least this reputation-based stuff, this publicity, as essentially as getting paid twice. And I think you'll be a lot happier with that. Are there any questions on some of these points so far? We had a few comments here. Can you hear me okay? Did we work out the internet issues? Now, if somebody can comment to me, I want to make sure that you're hearing me okay and everything's good. But I'm betting that maybe some people are just doing stuff and they're listening to my voice. So I'll go through some of the rest of the content that we have here. Another kind of hook is a story hook. Oh, thank you, Willie. Sound good? And no questions yet. All right. Well, great then. I'll take that as a compliment. I got some, good content then. So a story hook, I talked about telling a story. In the answer to just about every question you could imagine, you want to try to tell a story. But a story hook is essentially like, have you ever seen this clickbait stuff where it says, so and so left her husband after she discovered this, or something like that, or if someone says, if I only knew in my 20s what I know today, the last thing will surprise you, right? All of that clickbait stuff has its core in a story. So what's the difference between just clickbait and information and a story? Well, you need a character. So it's the character that you are leading with, not the content. And that's really the difference between telling a story, even if it's an anecdote or something like that, and doing something more like traditional talking points for PR, that sort of thing. So you want to have a character. You want to have, feel free to put yourself in the story. I put my son in these stories all the time, where I'm sitting down with him and I see him doing homeschool, and I'm working with him on something, and he's struggling with something, and then he finally figures it out, and it's really exciting. And when people listen to that, they're much more engaged. Think of any sort of situation. Think of changing a tire, right? How do you change a tire? Well, you bring out the spare tire, you jack up the car, do it safely. You take the lug nuts off, you take the tire off, you put the new tire on, you put the lug nuts on, and then you wind it down. Those are the steps for changing a tire. How boring was that, right? But if I say, oh my God, we were traveling to see my dad in the hospital, and the tire just blew. We nearly drove off the side of the road. We went over to the side of the road, and let me tell you, we were all nervous and shaken, but I knew how to change a tire. So I went to get the jack, and the jack wouldn't fit. And I had to crank it up even higher to make it fit and put something underneath. This is the sort of approach that you take with a story. You talk about the problems and the difficulties along the way, and all of a sudden, you're engaged, you're excited. The reason is that we as human beings really like stories. So I'm going to beat a dead horse when it comes to that, and it's a great hook. So the way you do actually, I should say, the way you do a hook with a story, if you're trying to get on the air, is you say, you wouldn't believe what happened to me at my wedding or funeral or something like that. Not my funeral, I guess, somebody else's, or you wouldn't believe what happened. So you take whatever the story is, and you make it into a personal anecdote. So even, let's say, you could even have a fantasy novel, right? We've actually done this with one of our fantasy fiction authors. You have a fantasy novel, and we turned it into a personal story. He was so upset by what Trump was doing in the White House that he wrote this novel to try to talk about, what the future would be like if we, change things like that. I'm not going to give too much away, but it was something along those lines about how we took the very writing of the book as a personal story that he did to try to do something. And it was very effective. Even just making the fact that you're writing the book into a story, that makes a difference, right? This is a really great book that we had the pleasure of promoting, called All the Women in My Family Sing. The reason I'm mentioning it is that it was an anthology of dozens of authors. So the next time I hear people say that, you can't get your voice out there, you can't, as an author, you can't get attention for what you're doing. I always think of this because we pushed that book so well because every story was from someone else, and it was really the power of the stories. It was all women of color that were doing this. So, but again, this one solved a problem as well. We wanted to have. There's a lot of people who want to talk about race in America. They want to talk about social justice, things like that, but they don't want to be heavy-handed. They don't want to be Antifa and pound people over the head with it. So this became the ultimate gift to somebody who's curious about that, they can read and they can have on their coffee table, and they can, it's kind of a soft, gentle gift to spread your political message, right? Whether or not you agree or disagree with the message is regardless. That is the problem it was solving, and that's why we sold some. All right. Are there any questions on any of that stuff so far? Because I'd like to get into interview skills here. I'm nursing a bit of a sniffles here, so I'm sorry if my voice sounds odd. So interview skills are something that will help you as a speaker as well. It'll help you in all walks of life. So I've taken a lot of speakers and worked with them to have them speak on stage, and then adjust that to an interview. So one of the main things, I made a whole course, a 14-day program called Nail the Interview. If you guys are interested in that, you can contact us, and I'll give you a special code so you can purchase it. But I made a whole course on how to nail the interview. So I'm not going to go over every aspect of that here, but I guess I could talk for hours about it. One of the main things about doing an interview is that when you see somebody, they're very chill compared to, they appear that way compared to reality. So what I mean is, when you see me right here, you just see my head, you see my torso, and that's it. You don't see the rest of me, and I'm not in 3 dimensions in front of you. I'm not. You can't see all around me. I can't kind of take over your space, right? So what's wrong with that? Well, the reason why, when you're looking at something on television, it seems like people can get away with things on TV that you could never get away with in real life. It's because of this aspect. You think that you're seeing me pretty well, but it's a really toned down version of the real me. If I was with you in person, it would be completely different, right? So they'll think of someone like Richard Simmons, or Robin Williams, or Jim Carrey, or something like that, right? If those guys did half of that stuff they did on television or movies, if they did that in real life, they'd be like taken to a funny farm, right? So how can they get away with that on television? It's because it's toned down. You're only seeing a portion of them, right? You can have something dancing, going crazy on the screen, and that's fine. So my point is, the number one problem I encounter when dealing with clients who want to learn how to do interviews on the air is they immediately are worried about being embarrassed, and they become more cautious. They're more they're more sensitive. They are just afraid to upset people. They're afraid to jump in and say anything. And I would actually argue that you have to be the opposite. You have to be larger than life. If you're an extrovert, be a hyper extrovert. If you're an introvert, be an extrovert. You want to be more larger than life. Don't be polite. Don't be cautious. Don't pause. What you want to do is be very, very intense, and that's because it'll come across as normal when it's on the air. I'll give you a really good example. I had one colleague of mine. He had a really good opportunity to do an interview, and he was on ABC, and he was very polite, and he only spoke when spoken to. And he would say, "Well, what do you think about this?" And he goes, "Yes, I think this is this, and this is this." And he was just very calm and buttoned up, and he came across as wooden, like Al Gore, in 2000. And it was a real shame because he really had a vibrant personality, but he was afraid of being embarrassed. Whereas myself, I can be a bit of an arrogant prick sometimes. So I jump in and I just like go crazy, and I'm just like talking about a story and what happened and waving my arms and having a good time. So I could be in the middle of that story, in the middle of that situation, and it all kind of pops into my head and all kind of comes out. So what's the difference? Well, I want to make sure that people understand that the dynamic on the air. So if you're a host, put yourself in the host's shoes, right? When you're hosting a show, it is a burden to entertain everybody watching, right? I mean, I'm burdened with entertaining you right now. I can't stop talking, right? So when you take a break and pause and let the other person talk, the guest that you brought on, and let them talk, then it makes a huge difference if they are really entertaining, if they can hold the audience. So in this case, in most situations, when you kind of take the stage, you're taking something from the other person. If I was at a party with you and you started talking, and then I kind of talked over you and started telling a really great story or something, I would be considered rude, right? But if you're on a radio show or you're on television or something like that, and I start talking and I tell a really, really great story, that's actually polite because I'm taking the burden of entertainment off of the host. Whereas when we're at that party, you don't have a burden of entertainment. You don't have to entertain everybody out there. It's more like you're all fighting for the attention of the crowd. It's completely the opposite. So this has just been my experience. I hope this is coming across the right way here. I don't want to say that everybody on television are rude bastards or anything, but it really does help. uh, so the thing is that you have to understand that there is a huge demand to entertain. There's a huge demand to fill that void. And so podcasts are a great example. Say, for example, you're on a podcast and someone's saying something and you jump in and say something else, and you jump in and say something else. Kevin Hart's really good at this, where he does interviews and someone will start to ask a question and they'll go, "Oh, no, you know what? This reminds me of something." And that's a terrible Kevin Hart impression, but he'll get like really animated and goes, "I got to tell you this. It's incredible. I got to tell you this time when I was over here and I did this." And in any other context, him jumping in and interrupting the host would be considered rude. But on a show, he's like one of the best interviews ever because he interrupts, not in spite of it. So I do have a lesson in my course, Nail the Interview, called "Interrupt Me." It's polite. I think something like that, and please interrupt me, and makes a really huge difference. Also, embarrassment and excitement. What you want to do is don't be embarrassed. You want to be extra excited, extra animated. Anything that you do, you want to be extra in it. You want to be more animated, more vibrant, because again, you got to get the attention of the host. You got to get the attention of television, right? Other interview skills, emotional hot buttons. This is a great one that I like to talk about. And this really brings us back to selling your books. So again, we start off, figure out what problem your book solves, and then use that problem to get you airtime or get you stage time on television or something like that, or even local clubs, whatever it is, get people's attention, tell stories and don't inform, and then be very animated and very excited, because if you're not excited about your book, nobody else will be. And then when it comes to actually getting someone to buy, I want you to start thinking of what are the emotional hot buttons? What is the thing that finally gets someone to purchase your book? So this is a little bit more intense than just the problem that it solves. Like, for example, I could go back to some of my books. Like if my book solves the problem of memory loss, well, that's one thing. But what about the emotional impact of memory loss in a family, right? The minute you start talking about having a family member with Alzheimer's, being able to prevent Alzheimer's and memory loss. And this is not just a sales pitch. There's scores and scores of evidence on this. And I'm very passionate about this process and project. So once you do that, then all of a sudden it's an emotional hot button. Emotionally, people go, oh my God, you're right. I really have to do something. So the emotional hot button is the thing that pushes them over the edge, and they have to buy it. And if you're trying to figure out this for your work, try asking yourself, what is the information that if people knew it, they would pay anything for this book? Like, what makes this book so revolutionary to even maybe a small segment of people that could absolutely change their life? And that is where the emotional hot button item is going to be. When I sell my courses and when I sell our clients, we have several emotional hot buttons that we press, and it makes a really big difference. It's not manipulative, I don't think. It's pointing out an important point. In fact, I've been given feedback back that by pointing out these important issues, it's brought so much more meaning to an otherwise, ordinary interview, right? You don't want to go onto an interview and just inform people. You want to go onto an interview and provide them meaning and purpose. And that's what an emotional hot button is going to do for people. All right, we've had a number go up, number go down a few times, so we got a few people here. Stay until the end. We are approaching the 45-minute mark. I wanted to leave a good 15 minutes or so to talk about monetization and such, but I'm going to keep my my email up on the screen there. In fact, what I want everyone to do is you can go to farrowcommunications.com, and in the top right-hand corner, there is a button to book a consultation with me. And I'd be happy to talk to you. I got to get my cursor back here. Here we go. Boom. There we go. That's a little bit better. So if you are interested in any of this, we can sit down and I can talk to you about what your emotional hot buttons are, what the purpose of your book is, what problem does it solve, and then how would we approach it from a PR perspective. One final thing I would add on to this, and please ask some questions after this as well, is every great author, every author that has made a good amount of money has made more of their money from something else other than the book sales themselves. And again, a lot of people fight me on this. You point to someone like a J.K. Rowling or a Stephen King, that literally millions of books have been sold. But compare those millions of books sold to the licensing deal with one theme park, or a movie deal that Stephen King makes or something like that, right? And you think, well, yeah, they can get movie deals, but the average author can't do things like that. But no, but you could get a speaking gig, right? Let's say your book has to do with recovery from addiction or something like that. You can get a speaking gig with an association of social workers. I've done talks with some of those associations before, for example. So there's all sorts of options to monetize your book. And I would say that you follow the same strategy. Is you start off by finding the problem that it solves, the demographic and trend that it fits with it, and then you find out who those people are, and then after that, it's really about the stories that you tell and the emotional hot buttons that you have. And then as you go forward, you think to yourself, how else can I solve other problems with this information? So you could become a speaker, you could become a consultant, you could become a coach, you could produce more content, you could have online courses. There's the world is your oyster today. There's some people that just go around speaking for free, but they have a like a Patreon page and make a lot of money too. Sometimes if they're very political or something like that. So uh, that's the area of monetizing your book beyond the book itself. So ask yourself, if the book made zero money, how could you get rich with the topic from the book, right? And a lot of ideas will start to pop in your head as you go through this. Once again, if you want to find out more about what we do, we're at farrowcommunications.com, and at farrowcommunications.com/offer, or in the top right-hand corner, you can book a consultation with yours truly, and I'll be happy to talk to you about how to monetize your book, how to monetize your message, and make it work. Is there any other questions in this series? I have a few prepared questions of people who sent them in ahead of time if we want to jump to that, but I want to give anybody an option to type in any questions that they have. No? All right. So I have one question from a former client of mine that wrote a book on relationships. And she was asking about how can she get her relationship book to be relevant when the mainstream media doesn't seem to be interested in relationships. It's all about hookup culture. At least that was the challenge that she was having. So my advice to this, and this is really a real thing. When she was pitching her book, she would be talking about how to develop a deep, lasting relationship, and all they wanted to do was like, okay, but how can you pick people up on dating apps, or can you give advice on how to improve a profile for a dating app, things like that. So what I suggested to her is what I think would work is to focus on solving the problem. Instead of focusing just on new relationships, talk about things like rekindling marriages and dealing with preventing divorce and things like that. So again, you find the demographic and a trend, you look for the story, and let's say that divorces are on the rise, or maybe they're falling, something like that. Like they're either going in one direction, right? and then that becomes the story. You can say this relationship expert thinks that divorces are falling because of this reason, and if you incorporate it, you're going to divorce proof your relationship as well. So that would be how I would handle that. Okay. I do have one client that was asking about, her books are very dog friendly, and she wanted to know how to make that more of a mainstream story. And it's not just a pure self-help, it's a memoir, but it's about caring for animals and rescuing animals and everything. Okay. So what I would say is, again, you want to find the core story. You want to find the story about these dogs that saves your life. Maybe it did save your life. Maybe it helped you get over addiction, something like that. And then that is the story that you pitch to the mainstream media. It's solving a bigger problem. So yeah, you're right. You can't pitch CNN with a simple story about, hey, we rescue dogs, right? It's kind of too niche. But if you have a really good reason why you rescue dogs, if you have, which I mean, you don't need to have a great reason, but what I mean is that maybe they're saving people's lives. They're great great members of the household, that sort of thing. Maybe there's a great personal anecdote or personal story where you're using dogs to help people who are elderly. Like, I don't know, you could take the story in a lot of different directions, but my point is, what you want to look for is ways that your content is actually helping people and saving people and making a difference. And then you can say, hey, once you find that demographic and that trend, then you can pitch the media for that demographic and trend. And you don't have to focus on I don't want to say like you don't have to focus on the content of your book, but it's the content of your book can be interpreted a lot of different ways, right? Um, so if your book is a lot about dogs, I mean, we had one great series of books that was a lot about horses, but we actually focused on how this veteran was using equestrian therapy, horse therapy, to overcome his PTSD. That made it a story about PTSD. It made it a story about veterans returning from war, all that sort of thing. So find the bigger story within what you're doing, and that'll make a big difference. All right. I want to thank everybody for being on the show and for being here. I think we're going to wrap things up to see if there's any more questions that you guys have. Go find me at dave@farrowcommunications.com. That's dave@farrowcommunications.com. You can email me directly or go to farrowcommunications.com/offer and book a private one-on-one consultation with myself and get to know what we can offer for PR. We do have guaranteed results when it comes to PR and organic pitching, and we can, we're really passionate about making a big difference for your book or business. I think for the last 10 minutes, if you don't have any more questions, I think we're going to wrap it up here. And I want you to say thank you very much for being here, and you have a good night. I'll keep the comments open for a little while to see if anybody asks any questions, and feel free to email me any of your private questions if you didn't want to bring it up today. Thank you very much.